Hello and a very warm welcome back to Hugh's Nursery. I've got a really interesting video for you today. It's all about creating edible windbreaks in your vegetable garden. So this is to help prevent getting wind damage from strong winds for your vegetables, because things like broad beans, which aren't always the strongest of things, they can get damaged by wind, and then when you've put in all the effort to grow them and then the wind comes, it's kind of a bit demoralizing. So I'm going to talk about edible windbreaks and just give you a few ideas, just show you what we're doing and what you can do as well. So ideally what we'd want is a walled garden, however that isn't possible. So what we're doing instead is we're trying to eventually trellis most of the vegetable garden, which is creating almost a makeshift wall. We're using a wooden trellis here, and this first plant here, this is a sylvanberry, so it's the same family as a blackberry, and what we're doing here is that we're actually training it like a fan. We're slowly training it up the trellis, and this creates a big surface area and it helps prevent wind from coming in from this side. We also have a plum tree here. Obviously with plums they grow a lot taller, so we can still expect a lot more growth here. I mean, we might prune it down just to make sure that it doesn't go too high, but this plum tree is great because we've got lots of foliage and you create a really nice edible barrier. And I can see a lot of plums at the moment, they're beginning to mature and grow. And then at the bottom, added benefit of creating edible wind barriers is that you can also grow things on the bottom. So here we're growing ochre. So we decided to double production from 2 tyres to 4 tyres, and this will probably turn into where we grow most of our ochre. So we've already looked at the berry that we're growing here. We're also growing a plum, and then also I've got an interesting story about the pear tree. So the story behind this pear tree is that in our orchard it's a little bit wet, the ground's a bit wet for growing pears. It's fine for apples, we do have a little bit of canker, but that's fine. But the pears weren't too happy, so we decided to literally just dig this out and transplant it here. And it's in a lovely, it's about southeast facing position. I can see loads of pears growing and I might have to thin them out soon, but it's much happier here. Again, it's got a lot of luscious growth and it's creating this big area, helping to block any winds coming into the garden from this area, which is kind of northwest facing. So here's just an example of a small section, and then I'll just show you the example behind you, which is a wind barrier of Loganberries. So here are Loganberries, and they're basically a cross between raspberries and blackberries, and you plant them about 8 foot in between each other. And I've managed to propagate a few plants which you've seen in a previous video that I've done, and we're going to hopefully plant another one a bit down there. But these are great because they send out these huge long, like here's an example, we'll have to probably cut this back, but they send these huge shoots which gives them that 8 foot span. Usually it's even longer, and then we can just go along and then we train them up, so it basically creates an actual wall of foliage. Now of course during the winter and autumn when there aren't any leaves, it doesn't really matter because we're not growing anything in the garden that's at danger of wind damage. And plus you'll see some photos now, we get absolutely huge harvests from these Loganberries, which is really, really good. And we've even got a hop plant here. Hops, it's kind of a bit of an experiment, but we might be making some beer if they grow enough. We've got a few dotted around the small holding, so I'll be interested to see that. So due to crop rotation, the beans have ended up in this bed, which is actually the most exposed bed of the whole vegetable garden, because behind us we have this massive field from our neighbours where they keep their sheep, and it's this huge field and the wind just blows over. There isn't a hedgerow for about 300 to 400 meters in that direction, so the wind just picks up and then it hits the vegetable garden basically from this point. So broad beans, generally you can grow them without support like we have here. We've been fortunate enough that we haven't had too big a wind, otherwise we will have to stake them. But we have noticed this problem, and we've got a young gooseberry plant here and another one here where I grew these from cuttings. We've also got a red currant there which is beginning to grow. I've grown these from cuttings, and here gooseberries grow excellently, and just in like 2 or 3 years, yes, it does take some time, but I mean it'll probably get about that high and at least have another 2-foot span on both sides, which creates yet again another wall of foliage, and it absorbs the energy, because when you have a hard surface, the wind just hits it really hard and it goes over the top, and then it can kind of create odd wind directions inside the vegetable garden. When you have a soft wind barrier, it basically absorbs and slows down, just like a bit like a sponge, the wind, so you don't get any terminal kind of wind damage inside the vegetable garden. So that's another great benefit of having edible wind barriers. And so far these broad beans are looking quite good. They are flowering. We should be getting harvest soon, but in 2 or 3 years time, this is going to be a really big mature gooseberry plant, as well as this one and this red currant, and I might even plant something else there. But that means that instead of having this wind funnel and shoot going straight into the vegetable garden, it'll all be protected. And another thing is that we can grow something maybe up the fence because we've put chicken wire on it, so we can also use that as a makeshift trellis. Now, if you want to grow annual windbreaks, it's a bit tricky because they usually take some time to develop, and by the time they have grown well, it's usually a little bit too late. So you can grow peas. These are garden peas. They will grow to just over 1 meter in height, and they're doing well. However, if you do want an effective edible windbreak, you need to make sure that you choose perennial plants such as currants, berries and fruit trees. And with fruit trees, you want to choose things like semi-dwarfing rootstocks, just so you can manage them easily. They don't take up too much space, but you have that freedom of being able to fan train them, and that creates a big surface area to try and absorb as much of the wind as possible. So I hope you found this video interesting, and I would love to know if you've had any ideas or if this has sparked anything for you, because wind damage can be very annoying, especially if you're on a very exposed site. So by creating a border, basically a wall of green edible plants, you're making absolute maximum use of the space that you have, but you're also killing 2 birds with 1 stone. So thank you very much for watching. I really hope you found it very interesting. If you have any further questions to do with this or anything else, simply ask me down below, and I'll see you again very soon with another video. Goodbye.